You mentioned practicing metta. Sometimes when we extend it towards, may I say, the wrong person, it may be seen as a weakness of you. When we have metta towards the wrong person, it's seen as a weakness. And how do we confront that sort of situation with metta?
I don't think there is such a thing as metta towards the wrong person. It's always metta towards the right person regardless. That's my feeling about that. Sometimes people can take advantage, but I think generally speaking, if you are kind to other people, kindness always tends to come back to you if you're kind to others. This is my experience in life. I try to live a life of kindness. Of course, sometimes people will not take that, they won't accept it. But generally speaking, if you're kind to others, and if you are so consistently, people will usually give you kindness back in return. That is my experience about these things. But of course, this is not about kind of, being a doormat for anybody or anything like that. That's not the purpose of this. It's not that so that people can walk all over you and these kind of things. The idea here is a kindness, but it is a realistic kind of kindness. Sometimes you need to be a bit assertive, but even when you're assertive, you're doing it with a broader view of compassion of what is going on. So it is I don't think you can go wrong with metta, but occasionally you have to also be, as I say, a little bit assertive about things.
When you have to inspire a workforce or other leaders, sometimes you have to visualize and create a vision which might be actually illusion or delusion.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile inspiring people with sometimes very tangible long-term goals?
Yeah.
To being more in the present and doing good and kalyana mitra relationships.
Okay. How do you inspire people to do the right thing, to live in a good way, or to?
No, in a sort of corporate environment.
Right. Okay. How do you inspire them to do the right thing on the job, basically?
And build a sense of future and hope.
Yeah.
For them, which may be more materialistic.
Okay. Well, I think it is still okay to. I mean, it's true, of course, any kind of vision of the future. I think everybody knows that to some extent, that there is a degree of delusion there. If you look to the future, it's always uncertain. It's always very unreliable. I think we all know that. So you can just you let people know that this is a vision. And if this is a vision, everybody should really understand that this is an ideal we're trying to achieve, to move towards. And of course, it's never going to be perfect. We know that. But that is okay, as long as you are clear about the fact that it is a vision, but it's something we're trying to move towards. I don't think there's a problem in inspiring people using something which is slightly diluted. Everything is slightly diluted. No kind of, there's no way around that, basically. Is that what you meant to ask? Yeah? Okay. So I don't think you have to feel bad about that. I don't think you are deceiving anybody. You're just giving them the best kind of idea of what the future looks like. That's all we can do, right? I mean, there are limits to our powers. And you inspire them in that way. But I think it's also very good for a leader to inspire people, also to remind them of the importance of integrity in work, right? The importance of actually being a good person, having a good heart. I have no doubt that if you live your life in the right way, then that often gives much better results, both in the private life and also in the professional life. I've seen so many people who've had very good professional lives, Buddhists, probably here, most people I know about are actually from Singapore. I go to Singapore quite regularly as well. And they say that if you have a high degree of integrity, very often it leads to very quick advancement, because people start to trust you. They know that you're trustworthy. They know that they can rely on you in difficult situations. They know you're not going to take them for a ride, right? In a short-term relationship, that doesn't matter so much. But if there's a long-term relationship, it matters enormously. And usually, if you are serious about a career, you have to think long-term. And so encourage people to do the right thing, because in the long run, it's going to pay off. In the long run, it's going to be very, very powerful. So this is one of those things. And of course, if it fails, if you are in a company that kind of doesn't encourage you to do the right thing, but even encourage you to do the bad things. If you are in that kind of environment, if you lose your job or whatever, it probably isn't such a bad thing. You probably are in a place where you shouldn't be in the first place. And the thing is that even if you then fail in your career or whatever, you can fall back on personal qualities that are very powerful. And those personal qualities means you have more sense of independence because you have more inner kind of happiness. Even if your career fails, it doesn't matter so much to you. Eventually all careers fail. Eventually you need a certain glass ceiling. You kind of get to the plateau where you don't go any further. Okay, what do you have then? At least you have your inner qualities. And those inner qualities give you a power of resilience, a power of independence that are incredibly useful in life. I have seen some of the monastics, the people I have seen practicing a long, long way on the path. One of the most powerful aspects of those people is their independence of the world around them. If the whole world goes in one way, but they want to go the other way, no problem, right? If all their friends say, okay, we're going to go this way, but they want to go another way, they don't care what their friends say. Most of us, we are we are tied to our relationships to some extent. If everybody says one thing, we start to doubt ourselves. Okay, maybe I should go the same way, right? And we're kind of tied to that. But the more you practice the spiritual life, the more independent you become, the less you have of those social ties, and the more you can continue to do the right things. So it has benefits, in my opinion, in all areas. So encourage people to do what is right. I think this is so important in life.
Most of the time now we are in busy life. Being mindfulness also improves how can raise the spiritual the level of the mind when you be in mindfulness, especially when we apply into our work.
Yeah. Okay. So the idea of mindfulness is to remember that mindfulness has many different levels, many different degrees. Mindfulness isn't like one thing, either it's on or it's off. It has many different degrees to it. And the most basic kind of mindfulness is just the awareness of what you are doing in daily life, right? Having the awareness of whether you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. So, for example, in my life, I try to be aware of my actions. I try to be aware of my speech. I try to be aware of my thoughts as well. And I ask myself, is this the right way I'm going here? So that is the basic level of mindfulness, just having that awareness of whether you're doing something wholesome or unwholesome in life. And then once you have that awareness, you have more power to steer yourself in the right direction. A lot of the time, we don't even know what we're doing, right? Somebody says something to us, and we reply very quickly, right? And afterwards you think, gee, did I say the right thing, right? This is a very common experience. But here the idea, instead of thinking about it afterwards, you think about it beforehand. Am I going to say the right thing or not? This is the basic kind of idea of mindfulness, and one of the things that is very, very, very useful already here. And if you can do that much already, you're doing very well there. But of course, on the higher level of mindfulness, you have the mindfulness that comes from meditation practice, from becoming peaceful, and that can also sometimes be applied in ordinary life. There are certain people who can be very focused in their life, like a surgeon doing an operation. I don't know if there are any surgeons here today, but I hear about surgeons. They perform an operation and get completely stilled and concentrated on the job they're doing, and the focus is 100% on that, right? And time just goes by like nobody's business. All they're doing is operating on that person, full focus. And that is another level of mindfulness that comes at a higher level. But the most basic one is the level of just knowing what you're doing the right thing. And from that, you can continue to build higher levels of mindfulness until one day you have the sense of flow, that's sometimes called a sense of flow, where things are just going very automatically and happily. When whatever work you're doing, you're fully there when you do it. Is that what you were asking, or are you happy with that? Yeah? Okay. If you're not happy, please say so. It's okay.
Bhante, just following from that question of mindfulness, there are two questions I'd like to ask you. What is the difference between mindfulness and concentration? That's number one. Number two, if you have a very busy life and a stressful life, how do you actually, at the office, at home I have no problem, but at office, when you have so much of work, you don't have much time to think. And in such context, how do you develop that mindfulness? What's the beginning? How do you actually start it? That's one thing. Then may I also ask a third question?
Okay.
Patience.
Yeah.
Patience is something that, we all understand it, but it's sometimes without your knowledge you snap, and you lose it and you regret. Once again, I would like to know, Bhante, how do you actually develop that patience? How do you start the starting point of it?
Okay. Wow, so many questions. What was the first one again? I lost it now because you were asking too many questions. So the first one was.
The difference between mindfulness.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me. So the difference is that mindfulness is just basically the ability to be aware in the present moment, right? To be here and now, not to be thinking about the future, not to be thinking about the past, not fantasizing about things, but just being in the present moment. It doesn't have to be very focused. It can be that your mind is moving from one thing to another one. You just have a sense of presence. Now, samadhi, or concentration, or stillness, or whatever you want to call it, is a further development on mindfulness. Right? So first of all, you get into the present moment. Once you are in the present moment, you can start focusing on things in that present moment. And that is kind of the idea. And once you focus on things 100%, whatever that might be, that is like called samadhi, or concentration, or whatever you like. Yeah? And that, again, has many, many different levels until you get into very deep meditation states. But the basic idea of samadhi, you can already have, like, when you're focusing 100% on your work or whatever. The basic idea is there. So that is that. And then in busy life, how you can kind of have mindfulness of what you're doing in busy life. Of course, it is tricky. It is not easy. But one of the most important things is just to understand the importance of living a good life, to actually do the right thing with people around you. The more it sinks in that every time you do something, you say the wrong thing, or you think the wrong thing even, the person you're hurting the most is yourself. Right? It's a very important thing to understand. And the reason it hurts yourself most is because afterwards you often feel remorse if you speak too fast, you do something wrong. And if you hurt yourself, basically you are like your own enemy. Enemy wants to hurt us, so we're acting as our own enemy. This is actually similarly from the sutras. So once you start to see that you're hurting yourself, you start to understand the importance of this. If you want to have spiritual growth, if you want to kind of go in the right direction, the more you hurt yourself, the more you are inhibiting and blocking that spiritual growth, the possibility of going in the right direction. So understanding the importance of these things is actually probably the main thing which enables you then to do the right thing. Other things that you can do, very kind of more practical things if you like, is during a day, these are things that I know people actually do in their ordinary work life, is to stop every now and again and just relax. Maybe 1 minute every hour or something, you just stop. Close your eyes and just say, breathe, right? Allow yourself to relax. Allow the thinking to calm down a little bit. Just 1 minute when nobody's around, close your eyes and just go inside of yourself to relax. Bring yourself back to the present moment. That enables you again to catch your mind, catch your speech much more quickly as a consequence. So that's a kind of little practical trick, right? Just to stop yourself in the track every now and again. So this is a sort of way you have to start. You have to have the Kalyanamitta who tells you how important this is, and then use little practical things like that to stop you sometimes. And the last thing about patience, yes, it is very, again, it is very important to be patient in life, to be able to kind of, again, to stand back and see things in the broader picture and to allow things to be, not to kind of snap too fast. But remember, and this is one of those things again, don't be too idealistic about yourself. Don't set the bar too high. If you set the bar too high and you say, I want to be perfect, I should never snap or whatever, you're probably asking for more suffering. This is one of the tricks, this is one of the kind of paradoxes in the Buddha's teachings. We all have to kind of aim for something better, aim for a higher state, aim for improvement in ourselves, aim for improvement in mindfulness. But at the same time, if you set the bar too high, it means you're creating suffering for yourself. You want to reduce suffering, but also you create suffering if you go about it the wrong way. So be very careful. Yes, aim for certain things, but don't set the bar too high at the same time. How can we be more patient? Well, one of the ways of doing that is to remember the simile I was talking about before, about the simile of the ship on the ocean, right? Everybody are just conditioned beings drifting around depending on the prevailing conditions. Once you understand that other people, they're not acting in the wrong way because there is a personal problem there. They're acting in the wrong way because of their own inner conditioning. Once you start to see that, it's very easy to forgive people and much more difficult to snap with them because of that. Because you're standing back and you're seeing the bigger picture rather than seeing the narrow picture at that time. So stand back a little bit. I mean, these things are difficult, right? And as long as you are aware that sometimes you will fail, then gradually you should be able to move in the right direction. It's a very gradual thing here. Okay, very good.
Yeah. I suppose as leaders, one of the things we try to do is to enhance the spiritual wealth of the people we come into contact with. But contrastingly, as business leaders, we also need to create wealth for the people we operate with and the communities we engage.
Yeah.
So is wealth creation in conflict to the Buddhist philosophy? Or how does that fit?
Not really. It's okay to create wealth. It's not a problem. The problem only arises when you kind of override the spiritual values, get overridden because of wealth creation. That's when the problem arises. But very often what you find is that people who are happy, who are content in their work, who actually, they tend to work much better. So if there is a sense of workplace where there's a degree of kindness or cooperation, people do the right thing, you actually create more work because people are more content. People who are content and happy are more efficient in their work, right? If your mind is full of negative thoughts, oh, I hate this company, it's not going to work very well and it's not going to create any wealth. So the idea of happiness, the idea of kind of spiritual aspects of the path very often go together with wealth creation. So wealth is not a problem. The problem is rather, how we create that wealth. And if you do it through dodgy means, dodgy things, then of course it is not very satisfactory. One of the things that I found very interesting in the suttas, the way the Buddha talks about this, he says that the kind of wealth that is really worthwhile having is the wealth that is well-gotten wealth, wealth that has been acquired through hard work, through the right way, through righteous means, right? Not wealth that you have got through corrupt processes or whatever, because that wealth that you have got through your own hard work, it really feels like it's yours. This is my wealth. I deserve this. I worked for this, right? I've done all the hard yards to get this wealth. And then when you have wealth which is rightly gotten, it is very, very satisfying to share that wealth with others. First of all, you use it on yourself to make yourself happy. You use it on your family members to make your family members happy, right? And then if you have a little bit extra and you want to use it on charity, you use it on charity as well. And a lot of happiness comes from sharing money, giving away things, material possession, whatever it is, with others when you have made it in the righteous way. The problem is that if you have gotten the money in the wrong way, it doesn't really feel properly like it's yours, right? Then when you give it away, it doesn't give rise to the same kind of happiness. So again, it shows you the importance of doing things with integrity. Integrity is so important all the way through the path. If you want to have a happy life on all levels, that integrity is so important. So by all means, create as much wealth as you like, right? But then do it skillfully, and then afterwards you can even share that wealth with others and make you even more happy. Then you have win-win situation, win-win-win situation, or whatever it is, triple win, quadruple win, or whatever it is. So, happy with that? Yeah? Okay.
Venerable Sir, I'd like to ask a question about speaking to patients who are close to dying.
Yes.
Actually, depends on the patient. Some are ready emotionally to accept this.
Yeah.
But very frequently, many of our patients are not emotionally ready. They don't want to hear the answer. Actually, they ask us, am I going to die? Basically asking us to say no.
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't want to lie to them also. There's a duty of care as well.
Of course.
I'd like your thoughts on how to handle it, because the patients don't really want to know the truth, but on the other hand, you don't want to increase their anxiety by giving them a blunt answer. Also, you want to tell a lie either.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess what you can do is you can, tell them, be honest about the kind of illness they have, so they have some idea what the illness is. But also, I mean, there's always uncertainty in medicine, right? You don't actually know exactly what the prognosis is. So you can say, well, there is a degree of uncertainty here. Doesn't look, I mean, things may go bad. It looks like, they may very well go bad, but there's always a degree of uncertainty. So kind of be gentle about it, right? Tell them about the upside as well as the downside. You don't have to outrightly lie, but make sure that the emotional aspect of the human being is kind of looked after in that way. So just do that. I think is a very important part. I don't know how much you can do as a doctor. I mean, there are limits, and sometimes what you have to do is to bring in somebody who is very good at looking after people who are dying, like maybe a Buddhist monk or a Buddhist nun or lay people who are skilled in these kind of things. And very often, as a monk, you tell people, well, this is just another process in life. You're going through this process. There's nothing too much to worry about. Just enjoy, just relax, take it easy. And when you do that, actually, death can be very enjoyable. This is the weird thing, because especially if you are very sick and you are very, your body is cancerous and you're falling apart, you have pains everywhere. When you get rid of that body, whoa, this is actually really nice, right? Yeah, hooray, get rid of the body, now I can move on into the future. So these are the kind of positive ideas, right, you can give to people. I have been to hospital a few times with my teacher, Ajahn Brahmali in Perth. And I remember at one occasion there was this young woman, she was only 25, and her body was ridden with cancer, and she was obviously going to die, right? And Ajahn Brahmali goes in there, hooray, you're going to die, hooray, finally, getting out of this body, moving on into the future, right? I thought, oh no, what is he saying? But it works, right? It's very powerful, because people get into this beautiful perception that actually death isn't so bad. This idea that death is very bad, I think, is very much a Western idea. It comes from very much a Christian conditioning, because in Christianity there is only one life, there's no future after that. Oh no, this one life been given by God, now you're going to die, and all these kind of things. But from a Buddhist point of view, death isn't so bad. This is just a transition, especially if you have lived a good life. Remind your patient of all the good things they have done, right? You have lived a good life. Why worry? You are moving into it, but most likely moving into something positive in the future. So you can do it on those two levels, really. I don't know how much, as a doctor you go into kind of spiritual care of people. I'm not sure about that, but you can do it on those levels. Remind them of the uncertainty, and also remind them of the fact that dying itself actually isn't necessarily a bad thing. Can be a good thing. Happy here.
Thank you.
Very good.
Dear Aaron, I would like to ask you a question relating to a story in Ajahn Brahm's book about two bad bricks. So, where we learn to live with endurance and imperfections in life.
Yeah.
But what if the 998 bricks were bad and only two were good?
Okay. Do you know any examples of that? It was perception, okay. I think that it's true, sometimes there probably are more than two bad bricks, but remember that our job really is not really to judge other people, not to judge whether there are 998 bad bricks or two bad bricks or whatever. Our job very often is to look for the good qualities in people, and most people have good qualities, right? When you look around the world, you see people, even people who may not be always do the right thing, sometimes they say the wrong thing, they may still do acts of charity. They may still love their family members, bring up the children in a good way, right? People have so many sides to them. And one of the most important things for us is to actually focus on the good in the people around us. When you focus on the good in people around you, you feel much better. If you always look for the negative in people, you feel miserable inside. When you see the good in people, you actually feel good inside of yourself. And then you have an opportunity to have metta towards those people as well. And what is so powerful about focusing on the good in other people is that they tend to actually feel that, and then those good qualities are reinforced because you are focusing on them. It's very strange. I can see that, for example, with somebody like Ajahn Brahmali in our monastery. He's very good at always seeing the positive in everybody, and you feel like living up to that, right? When he sees the positive in me, I sort of say, yeah, okay, okay, great, I want to live up to that thing. And people are very often like that. You look for the positive, and the positive grows. You look for the negative grows. There's a very powerful reason for just focusing on the positive in other people. Makes your life better, makes the life of the other person better. Of course, it is important also to be realistic to some extent, especially if you are a business leader, a leader in a certain position of authority, because if you're not realistic, you can leave all the bad apples kind of there, dragging your business down. Of course, that is important. But you give people a lot of opportunity and chances before you fire them or whatever, because they're not the right person. And then by doing that, very often you are making them into the person you want them to be by focusing on the good qualities. Yeah, happy? Not quite? Happy enough? Okay, very good. Yes?
Another question now. When we do surgeries and treating patients, sometimes we make complications. But those are unpreventable complications, and in medicine point of view, if we say those are acceptable complications. But once it happens, personally I feel guilty that I would have prevented that if I would have been more careful during the surgery. So how?
Yeah, this is the retrospective knowledge, right? Retrospective, you look back and you think that, I could have done it differently. Remember, retrospect is usually a delusion. It's usually a delusion. Right? Usually when you look back, you think you don't see the reality of the situation as it was then. You're seeing something else. It is a kind of delusion when you look back at that. So don't trust that thought. There's no grounds really for feeling guilty about that. If you do your very best, every time you do an operation on somebody, you do your very best. You care for the patient and you do the best you can. If there is complications afterwards, it's just the nature of the human body, the nature of the uncertainty in the system. These things sometimes happen. So don't judge yourself for that. Put the maximum care you can into the operation itself, and then afterwards you just have to let it go. Whatever happens, happens. Don't trust that illusion afterwards. It is the wrong view of reality that you have at that particular point. It is one of the very important points to be made if you are a doctor. You cannot always cure. Sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes there is no solution for the illness, right? People have a type of cancer that is very aggressive. It just keeps going. It doesn't matter how much, modern medicine you use on them, it still goes the wrong way. And the point is, sometimes you can't cure, but you can always care. You can always care, and that is the most important thing. As long as you care, then cure is uncertain, you are doing the right thing from a Buddhist point of view. Yes?
There is, people tend to have dreams, as you said, but I'd like to touch on something you said earlier about setting the bar too high. In the modern world, we're all talking about progress and, say, curing cancer, discovering new galaxies, or whatever. I think, having discussed with other people, there's this idea that Buddhism seems to say that don't bother doing things sometimes. So my question is, does acceptance of things as they are hinder progress in the modern world?
Okay. The thing about acceptance of things as they are is the point is just that sometimes you can't do anything, right? Sometimes there is no solution to a problem, and that's when you have to accept things as they are. But when there is a solution, when there's something you can do, go for it, right? It's a chance to make good karma, a chance to make yourself happy, a chance to make the world happy. If you discover some new galaxies down the road, it's going to maybe have a big effect, right? Because the more we understand about the universe, the more abilities we have to deal with things. So the purpose of science is to enable us to have a bit more control over the world. You're never going to have full control. It's always going to be problematic. But at least we can have a little bit more control over things. So if you do these things with the right mind state, I'm discovering something. May this be for the benefit of humanity, right? It becomes very nice. It becomes something very wholesome. You can feel inside of yourself that you are contributing to humanity as such. So the idea that we should just accept things and not do things is, I think, is actually quite bad, because it stops us from actually making contribution to humanity and to everybody else. So know when you can't do something. The sort of things you can't do anything about is when you go out in Colombo on the streets and people say nasty things to you. can't do anything about that, right? Wherever you live in the world, as long as you're part of humanity, you are going to have to hear things you don't like to hear. Okay, can't do it, so I accept it. I don't get angry back. I just say, this is the nature of reality. Sometimes when you have pains in the body, you can't do anything about it, at least not straight away, so you accept that. So this is kind of the idea. Sometimes society is going in the wrong way, right? Things are kind of falling apart. You're not going to change society. Know what you can do something. If you can't do anything, let it be. That's really what it's about.
Most Venerable Sir.
Okay.
Yeah. We were talking about spreading metta and practicing kindness earlier. So sometimes this is something I see when you practice kindness, especially when you are in a large organization like a hospital.
Yeah.
Sometimes like you tend to attract a lot of people who seek help, advice, solving problems and all that.
Okay.
And sometimes for a person it becomes overwhelming. Because what you do in addition to your job, your commitments to family, and then you have a whole lot of people look up to you for advice, solving. It kind of sometimes gets inundated. And I personally sometimes find it a bit more stressful at the end.
Yeah.
Is there a better way of doing it? Because I find sometimes kindness is perceived as a weakness at times.
Okay, well, what you have to do is to have kindness for yourself as well, not just kindness for others, right? You have to know your own limits. How much can I take? How much can I do? And when you reach that limit, you have to be able to say no. Sorry, okay, you may need help, but this is not, find some other solution to the problem. Ask somebody else. Sometimes you have to know your own limits. Because the problem is that if you overstretch yourself, if you go too far, your ability to care for those people you're already caring for starts to decline. Don't have the same ability to be kind to other people. So you're actually reducing your overall ability to care because you're getting too stressed and you're getting drained emotionally. Your compassion is kind of seeping away. Don't have the same ability. So you have to look after yourself. This is so important. You have to know when to say no, when enough is enough. It's 5 o'clock. Okay, let me run away now before anybody else catches me, or whatever time. I don't know what time you leave your job, but whatever it is. Now is the time to go back. And then, sometimes do little things that give you a little bit of excess energy, like I was talking about before. Take a 1-minute break every now and again, just to gather your energy again and to kind of become quiet inside. And these little kind of things. I don't know if that's possible, but I think that is so important in life, to know when to say no and when to accept more work, and then find a good balance for yourself. Don't be afraid of that. It's not selfish. It's important to look after yourself. The person who is closest to us in the whole world is ourselves, and we have to look after that person first of all. Then you're doing, this is from the suttas, the Buddha said that. So do it out of faith. Don't, even if you feel it's wrong, do it out of faith in the Buddha. You're heading in the right direction.
Venerable Sir, you have given us some very good advice on day-to-day life. I was just wondering, now going forward spiritually, we need to start reflecting on the impermanence and also the impermanence of the 6 senses, as for example given in the Chachakra Sutra and so on. Is there a way of incorporating those ideas into our day-to-day life? And if so, how do we do that?
Okay, I wouldn't recommend you to worry too much about the impermanence of the 6 senses. It tends to get very theoretical. This is the sort of thing you do once you get into very deep meditation. You start to remember, look at the 6 senses, understand that they are impermanent, that they are dukkha, that they are non-self. But it really comes into its right when meditation becomes very profound. Yes, it is important to remember impermanence. The kind of impermanence you should remember is life is going to come to an end. Right? Death is one of the most powerful aspects of impermanence to remember. The Buddha specifically says in the suttas, everybody should remember death, should recollect death. Whether they are lay people, men and women, everybody should recollect death, because it tends to set things in the right priority. You start to remember what is really important in life. That's one kind of impermanence. Another kind of impermanence is to remind yourself that everything that is beloved and pleasing to me will become otherwise. absolutely everything, right? You can't hold on to things in this world. Sometimes nature says, I'm going to claim back my own. Everything in the end belongs to nature, and nature will come back and claim those things one day. Your marriage may break up, your house may get burgled, it may burn down. I don't know if you know about Australia, but Australia has a lot of problem with bushfires. Bushfires come through, burn down the whole town, right? Hundreds of houses just gone to ashes. It happened very recently, very near the monastery where I stay in Perth. And people, of course, are wailing and crying, oh no, everything is gone. If you remember that everything that is dear and pleasing to me must become otherwise, you are creating a little bit more of a buffer between you and these kind of events that must eventually happen. So this is the way it's a very practical way of understanding impermanence. Remember your own death, remember everything else also must leave you at some stage. When you use very practical things like that, they actually have a real impact on your life. So do things that have a real impact. Try not to get too theoretical about the Dhamma, because it doesn't really do all that much to you. That would be my suggestion. Otherwise, you are welcome if you want to join us on a meditation retreat. I'm very happy to talk about the impermanence of the six senses and things as well in the future. So, okay. Yes?
Today, in Sri Lanka, a fair amount of conversions take place, Reverend.
Yes.
Most of them are due to materialistic gains that are given by people who want to keep Buddhists away. But there are a few intelligent people who tend to go away from Buddhism on the excuse that they feel Buddhism dukkha, the first noble truth, is suffering. They put the word dukkha as suffering.
Yeah.
And they believe, why are we talking about suffering? So that the negative people who want to be negative about Buddhism always talk about that. And there are, few instances where intelligent, educated people who have been good Buddhists have gone away from the religion because of this word suffering. I believe is not the real translation for dukkha. Do you agree?
Yeah. It's true. I mean, people disagree on these things. What is the appropriate translation? It depends on what kind of... Remember, the context here is all important, right? From the Buddha's point of view, the Buddha is standing at a very, very high level. He's looking down. And for somebody who is an arahant and the Buddha, the world looks very different from what it looks from our point of view. It's very hard sometimes to understand until you get the same level of meditation yourself, until you get to the same kind of mountaintop, and then you can look down, you can understand whether suffering is the appropriate translation or not. But remember the point of the Buddhist path. It is true that in the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, etc., it is true that you find that there. But the Buddhist path is full of happiness, right? If you start to read the sutras more broadly, happiness is a very, very common word found throughout the sutras in all kinds of situations. By practicing sila, morality, by practicing chaga, generosity, you're building up an inner sense of gladness and happiness for yourself. By practicing the meditation, I will give you an example of how the sutras describe the meditation practice. This is how the psychology or the inner experience of meditation is described in the sutras. You start off with sila. Sila in a very broad sense, not just pancha sila, but doing good acts and even thinking kind thoughts. You start with that. Based on that, you don't have any remorse. Based on not having any remorse, you have pamudja. Pamudja means gladness. Based on gladness, you have piti. Piti is this currents of happiness going through the body very often that you can have in deep meditation. Based on the piti, you have tranquility, this beautiful, peaceful feeling that you have in the mind as a consequence of meditation. Based on the tranquility, you have sukha, which is even higher happiness, right? Based on the sukha, you get samadhi. Samadhi is the final stillness of the mind as you go into very deep meditation. And once you start to look at that path, almost all those words I just mentioned are just varying degrees of happiness. The whole path can be looked at as an ever more deepening of the degree of happiness and contentment through meditation practice and also through all the other actions that you do. So it is important that we present Buddhism in the right way. We don't present it one-sidedly as just suffering, but we see the two sides of the coin. And once you see the two sides of the coin, it actually becomes a very powerful path. We can't deny that there is suffering in our lives. There is such a thing. At the same time, we can't deny that there is also happiness. Two sides of the same coin. And once you start to see that, that's when it really starts to work.
The problem we have is that message cannot be taken across by the most of the good Buddhist priests who give sermons in this country.
Yeah.
Do not interpret that message in that manner, Reverend. That is our problem.
Tell them off. Tell them, please talk about happiness. We want to hear more about happiness, right? So, yeah.
Today's youth are bombarded by noise, and it's mostly electronic noise.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how you can bring a little bit of stillness in their life, to put them on the right path?
Children, huh?
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
young adults.
Young adults, okay. I think, in my experience, the best way to encourage anyone to kind of do the right thing, undertake the right practice, the Buddhist practice or whatever it is always to be a good example. That's really the only way that works. And as a parent or as a friend or whatever it is, the idea, the power of the example is just so enormous. If you do the right thing, if you live the right life in the right way, eventually your children or whoever it is will also start to move in the right direction. If they are young adults, probably no hope, right? You probably just have to wait. You have to wait till they become more older, more mature, and then that is when things will start to kick in. And they will remember, actually, our mother, she's doing all the right things. Look at her, she's living a good life, she's happy and well. Maybe there's something to this, right? Maybe there's something to this. And then things start to kick in as a consequence. One of the most powerful examples for me personally is the way, the effect my becoming a monk had on my own parents. When I started off on this Buddhist path, my parents were horrified. Where have we gone wrong in the upbringing? He's becoming a Buddhist monk. What is going on? We gave you a good upbringing, lots of education, spent lots of money on you, and now you're kind of just going off into this cult, right? Becoming brainwashed by this Buddhist teaching. They didn't know anything about Buddhism, absolutely no idea what was going on. They thought this was really, really bad news. And then the astonishing thing that has happened, very gradually over the years, they have come around, right? They have understood that actually there is something very powerful about this. These teachings actually are incredibly useful. Taken a very long time, unfortunately, but now they are essentially Buddhists. Now they basically want me to teach them meditation when I go back home. Now they read Buddhist books, they listen to my talks online. That's astonishing. My own father listens to my talks online. When I heard that, I was, whoa, the shock of a lifetime, right? It's not supposed to happen, right? But this shows you the power of example. All I did, I didn't try to convert my parents. I didn't try to sort of tell them what Buddhism is about. I just decided to be a better son, to do the right thing. How can I be kind to my parents? How can I have more compassion and understanding? And as I do that, gradually, it kind of gets to their heart, right? And after a while, they start to look at the situation differently. The power of example is just so strong and so useful. So I think in the long run, don't try to change your children the way they are now, because I think it's probably very difficult. Just keep on doing the right thing. Keep on living the good life. Be the best mother you can possibly be. Are you talking about your own children? Or yeah? Okay. That's usually the way it is. So just be the best mother you can possibly be here. And then they have the living example. Don't try to convert them now. They're probably too young. When the time is ripe, then things may start to change. That's what I would suggest.
Bhante,
Yes.
this is about meditation, metta.
Yeah.
Metta, when we do meditation, we say, may all beings.
Yeah.
But if I direct it to one particular person, does it amount to attachment?
It depends. It depends on how you do it. It depends on which person it is. If you do it to your husband, I don't know if you're married, but if you do it to your husband, then of course it can be some attachment there. Much better to do it to a more neutral person, not somebody who is too close to you. Somebody neutral, like maybe a spiritual leader or something like that. Start with somebody neutral who is more distant to you.
So if it comes to, if I can't do anything, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
So the only way I can help a person who's close to me, or not a patient, if I direct my metta to that person, so still then will it be attachment? Because it's a sickness that I'm hoping that he gets better.
You can do that. That's fine. If it is, the best thing often to do is to build up the metta somewhere else on some other object. Try to build it up somewhere else. So it is kind of a nice, neutral, balanced metta, and then you can direct it to the person once it is built up. So build it up on some neutral person, then have metta for the whole world, and then at the very end direct it towards that person.
Thank you.
Okay? Yeah.
Venerable Sir, how in a country like Sri Lanka where there's a lot of religions jostling side by side, and there's a lot of extremism occasionally that happens, racial incitement.
Yeah.
What should the Buddhist response be to that?
Okay.
And some people have described the Sinhalese as being a majority with a minority complex. How does one deal with that?
Well, okay, we're getting into politics here, which is always a dangerous thing, but one of the things that I feel is very unfortunate, and we see this throughout the Buddhist world, you see it everywhere, and it's because it's human nature, right? And that is that people tend to be nationalistic about things, and the Buddhist teachings tend to be kind of grabbed hold of by these nationalists and used for nationalist purposes, and I think that is very, very unfortunate. I think nationalism is one of the scourges of the day. You see it now in the UK. You have the Brexit thing, right? It comes down, large part, I think, to nationalism. You see what's happening in the US with somebody like Donald Trump, running for president, and I think it has a lot to do with nationalism. We're kind of trying to isolate ourselves, trying to be proud of our own country. It's very narrow-minded, right? We are all here together. We're part of the same human race. It's crazy to make these divisions between each other. My nation is better than the other nation, right? This kind of stuff. It's just silly. We should really work together on this planet. But unfortunately, human nature is such that we tend to identify with things. We identify with being Buddhist, being a Muslim, being from this country, being of this background, having this education. And because we identify with these things, it's actually the sense of self that tends to get in the way here. And that sense of self is really the problem. It's nothing to do with Buddhism. It has to do with the defilements of people coming from the sense of self, making it felt, and then using Buddhism in an inappropriate way to advance its own cause. And that is really, really the problem there. So what we really have to do is we have to go back to the word of the Buddha, take the word of the Buddha as it actually says, really have kindness for all beings, right? The idea in Buddhism is to have metta for the whole world, not just metta for my friends and their relatives, right? But actually for the whole world, for everybody. And once you do that, you break down the barriers between people. You don't judge people anymore. And when you break down barriers, there is no room anymore for nationalism. Nationalism is the exact opposite, is setting up barriers. Real metta is the abandonment of all barriers and then having that sense of kindness for everybody. It doesn't even matter if somebody is a terrorist. It doesn't matter who they are. There's always the human element there. You can have metta basically for anyone. So that's what I think is unfortunate. In Burma you have seen similar kind of things, and it's very unfortunate that the Buddhist world, Buddhism is supposed to be this religion, and then it is abused and used in this way for negative purposes, and I think it's very unfortunate. But that's life. What can you do? Okay. Any last over here? Okay, great, very good.
Most Venerable Bhante. And now in Sila we do the work for others as well as for us. That includes, you also mentioned that it is come under Sila. And in Karaniyamatta Sutra, Buddha talks about less work and get involved in to a lesser extent. How do we balance it in relation to the day's work?
Okay, so what you're asking, how do we balance the amount of work we do?
That we do, the service and all. That comes under Sila. And then in relation to meditation, if you do go on working, it's difficult to sort of engage in meditation and all. So how do you balance it in relation to day's work?
Okay, so remember the most important thing in daily life is not the meditation practice. The meditation practice can always take second, can always come second in ordinary life. The most important thing is just how you deal with people. That is by far the most important thing here. So sometimes I recognize it's very hard for people to have time for meditation. Life is just too full, and if you try to meditate, you just fall asleep or whatever it is, right? Because it's too much. So don't worry too much about the meditation in ordinary life. If you can do a little bit, great. If you can't, there is no time. Don't worry too much about that. Far more important is the sila, the kindness, your ability to deal with people in a good way here. Because that is ultimately what builds up the mind. And then every now and again, go on a meditation retreat, right? And then when you have time away, go outside of your house, go somewhere far away so you can forget about all your attachments and all your belongings, and then you have a chance to see whether your ordinary sila in daily life is really giving you the results, giving you the goods which you're supposed to get through your meditation practice. So meditation in daily life, few people can do it. The vast majority probably can't. It's not so important. Important thing is sila. Have I answered your question? I'm a bit unsure. Yeah? Yeah? Okay, very good. Excellent. Okay, I think we have time for one more question maybe, if somebody wants to ask the last one. Everybody happy? Everybody really content, right? This is what happens if you practice the Buddhist teachings right. Oh, you become so content. No more questions. Wow, how nice that is. So, yeah.
Maybe
yes,
I'll ask
please,
the last question.
You want to ask the last question? Okay, wow.
Bhante, we heard that Ajahn Brahmali is coming in January next year. Can you tell something about his visit?
Maybe, yeah. I don't really know what's going on. Venerable Metta Vihara is the master of everything, I'm just kind of following whatever he says. I say, go here, go there. I say, yes, sir, and I just follow after. But yes, Ajahn Brahmali is apparently coming in January. I think, unfortunately, that the main thing that he's doing a retreat for the monastics. There's going to be a retreat for, 150 monks and nuns or something like that, or I don't know how many, lots anyway. And he's so busy that I think, unfortunately, he doesn't have much time apart from that. So I think that's basically what he's going to be doing here. So.
Okay, second question is, while answering one question, you said maybe you could have a meditation retreat again in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
Where are you planning to come? The future is uncertain, but...
Exactly. That is the right answer. You got the answer right there. So you know what it is. I don't have to say anything, yeah. Very likely I will come back one day, but I just don't know when, because it depends on so many factors. But very likely. I like it here in Sri Lanka. It's a wonderful Buddhist country, it's a great place to be here. So I can't see any reason why I shouldn't be coming back.
Yeah, I think you might...
We'll see what happens, yeah.
Yeah, we would like you to consider if it is such a nice place to be here. And thank you very much for being such a wonderful Kalyana Mitta. You spent almost 2 hours with us, sharing so much today. And you had a long day, and I know you had 10 days in Bandaravela. You just came previous night, and we know that you are going to visit your parents.
Yeah.
And on behalf of all of us who are here, we wish you all the very best and have a pleasant trip.
Wonderful.
And may you be very happy.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much, dear friend.
Okay.